hit like, and subscribe. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel.
Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we hold Night School, where we break down the most controversial subjects, the most interesting topics, the most contested debates going on in the world today. And tonight is no different. We have what I hope is a really spirited conversation. I see it marked as a debate. It's not really a debate as much as it is a spirited conversation, I hope, with Cenk Uygur. Y'all know him. He's been on the show before. He's a friend of the show. He's also all over the internets for a very long time. He's a YouTube legend. He's the founder and CEO of TYT.com. And he's been getting a lot of backlash for his appearance at Turning Point USA's America Fest, where he joined Charlie Kirk on stage. I talked about this 2 nights ago. I didn't understand it. I didn't like it. I was confused by it. I was frustrated by it. And I said, let me reach out. Let me reach out to my guy and see what he thinks about it. See if he can come on and have a conversation about it. And he did. He's here. Before I bring him on really fast, I just want to show you all once again. And we showed this the other night. I'm going to show you all the clip. They got a lot of people just a bit confused. Here it is.
What I mean by that is not a revolution against the Democratic Party or the left or the country, but a revolution against the establishment. So I knew you guys were for real in fighting against the establishment when I started going on right-wing shows and I would say something negative about Mitch McConnell. And when I did that in the past, what I would get back is, oh, no, Mitch McConnell's great. Pelosi's terrible, but Mitch McConnell's great.
Let's do that here. What do you guys think of Mitch McConnell?
All right. Yes, I love that. So look, for my left-wing friends that are watching out there, they just booed Mitch McConnell. That's a great thing, okay? And let's do one more. What do you guys think about Dick Cheney? My left-wing friends out there, we have been waiting for the right-wing populists to boo Mitch McConnell and Dick Cheney our whole lives. Take the win. Take the win. Now, what we need to do in the Democratic Party is we need to do likewise. We need to have a revolt against the Joe Bidens, the Kamala Harrises, and the Nancy Pelosi's.
I wanted to keep that piece in because I know a lot of people have been quoting Cenk out of context and making it seem as if he was just leaning toward the right. And it's very important to note that he also said, for you leftists out there, that he said we need to also have that same energy toward Joe Biden and toward Kamala Harris so that we can have a true progressive movement, a true left-wing movement. I want to bring him in now so we can talk about what this all means. My friend Cenk, good to see you.
Good to see you, Mark. Appreciate that you had me on so we could talk it through rather than just yelling at each other or talking at each other, etc. So appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's my pleasure. After you appeared there, and I want to get to the why of that, you said something else. Actually, before we go there, talk to me. What made you go to this thing? Why would you appear there?
Yeah. So I've got to rewind all the way back to about a year ago to explain that. Because if you had asked me a year ago, would you go to AmFest and talk to Charlie Kirk? I'd say, is he ready for what I'm about to do? Right. And so what happened? I started being deeply concerned about 15, 16 months ago about Joe Biden. And I was like, this guy's falling apart at the seams. And we got to beat Trump, and there's no way in the world this guy's going to beat Trump. And so both because of his mental decline, but also because of the numbers. The numbers were overwhelming. Anyone who knew politics understood he had no chance of winning. That's why I had, I had strange bedfellows before the right wing with David Axelrod and James Carville and other people who could read numbers and realize that Biden was going to lose. So as you might remember, I ran against Biden in the primary just because I got so desperate. I was trying to bring progressives into the race, and I tried to bring governors into the race. I'm like, somebody's got to beat Trump. And so then when I ran in that act of like, breaking glass in case of emergency, just to try to push out Biden in any way, shape, or form, I started going on a lot of shows, and some of them wound up being right-wing shows. And in the beginning, I was just as skeptical as, a lot of folks on the left are now. But slowly I started seeing something. And so, guys, I don't want to get it twisted. It's not like I started saying, "Oh my God, the right wing they're all angels, and none of them have any bad intent." So no, of course not. That's any description of 77 million people that boils it down to any extreme is comical, right? But what I did start seeing is things that surprised me. Like they really do hate not just Mitch McConnell and Dick Cheney, but they hate the concept of war because they think it wastes our money. They think they hate the concept of corruption, and I think that they actually do hate corruption, but they're blinded to Trump's corruption, right? And so the more I saw and the more I started to feel like, wait a minute, there's actual populists in those hills in a way that was really encouraging. And Mark, the reason why it's encouraging is at the end of the day, in order to do something that is grand, something that actually regains our democracy, something incredibly difficult like getting money out of politics, at some point I've always known, and I've said this for over a decade, that the right and the left, you have to unite against the establishment. So for the first time in my life, there's a shred of hope that actually could happen. So that's what opened me up to having further conversations, including going to AmFest.
Okay. I mean, the other night here on the show, on Night School, I sort of laid out what I thought was the best possible explanation. Because there are people who are saying you were a grifter, that you bought in, you've sold out, you got money to appear there, and you're drifting to the right. And I said that I respect you enough and care enough about your importance to this movement to give you the benefit of the doubt. And the benefit of the doubt means I can just say he's wrong, right? He's made a bad choice without assuming bad character, without assuming bad faith. I just think you might be making a bad choice, and I do. And so that's part of what I wanted to sort of get at, because that argument you laid out to me is the best case scenario, right? Is that you believe that there's a shred of possibility that the right, or at least the people assembled in that event, are so fed up with the establishment that they're willing to align with those of us on the left who are fed up with the establishment, and that we can tear this thing down and produce something new. I'm baffled as to why you think that's the case. But let's start with the booing, because I think that's a good example of what I'm talking about. You sort of pointed to the Mitch McConnell boos, which I'm always a fan of, and the Dick Cheney boos as evidence that, look, they're done. But that crowd there, I would argue, that crowd wasn't booing Dick Cheney and Mitch McConnell because they represented any particular political vision or because they were part of the establishment. They booed them because they're Trump cult members, and Trump has issues with them. If those people, if Dick Cheney stands up and says, "I'm endorsing Donald Trump," that whole crowd erupts in his favor. So to me, that's not even about a political move against the establishment. It's just good old fashioned cult behavior.
Yeah, no, I disagree. So let me break it down. First of all, I appreciate you not assuming bad intent. Apparently, that's a rarity online.
Very rare.
Yeah, and so number two is, just to be clear with everybody, I did not get paid for that. So I know that there's all these conspiracy theories out there, but no, I don't get paid for any of this. And if it's, and then by the way, there's two conspiracy theories, or theories, let's put it that way. One is that I'm doing it for the money, and the other is that, oh, that's it, the Young Turks is going down. Well, you can't have both, right? Either we're going down and we're going to make less money, or we're grifting for the money. So pick one. But no, it has nothing to do with money. So now to the substance of that question, Mark. So look, I think you guys are wrong. So on the one hand, I get it, Mark. So the fact that Trump is against McConnell and Cheney, is that relevant? Of course it's relevant, right? It didn't come out of nowhere. But are they? So look, there's three layers within the right-wing movement. And this is true on the left side too. It's really a hierarchy, right? There's the voters at the bottom, right? And then there's the media figures and politicians in the middle. And then there's the very top leadership, right? So, and that hierarchy also has a hierarchy of trust, in my opinion, which is that you trust the voters the most and the leaders the least, right? And for a lot of people, mainstream media would say the opposite: trust the voters the least and the leaders the most. I totally disagree. I'm a populist. I think that's nonsense. I think the leadership on both sides are deeply corrupt and have, personal incentive for that corruption, whereas the voters are just real people, right? So, and MAGA voters are honest to a fault. I mean, they're not hiding their opinion at all, right? And they will say things to you that'll rock your world, right? And but if you say Trump is dishonest, well, of course, right? I mean, he has an enormous track record, right? If you say the politicians are dishonest, of course, overall, of course, right? And right-wing media is where it gets actually a little bit interesting. So, but when I go to go on these right-wing shows, one, there's right-wing media, which we'll come back to in a second, but two, just on their voters first, right? How can I tell? Well, number one, you get the comments in social media, you see it on those posts, etc. Number two, having gone to AmFest and other places, I've now seen and interacted with hundreds of MAGA guys, and they don't all speak for each other, and they don't all speak for the movement, etc. But on top of that, sometimes, the first time I was on Patrick Bet-David's show, or the second time, they did a poll. I pushed for paid family leave, and I try to say, can we start something on this show, left wing, right wing, get agreement, etc. And I explained to them what paid family leave is and how moms get 12 weeks off after they have a baby, and they kind of love it, right? Because that you can see how that could match conservative ideology. So the only one that was a little bit hesitant was the main host, Patrick, right? But all the other hosts were like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. And then they polled their audience, and 75% of them said, yes, we want paid family leave. Okay, so they're not lying. They genuinely mean it. And Mark, you have to remember, those guys have been lied to their whole life, first with mainstream media and then to a large degree with right-wing media. So they've never heard a positive take on paid family leave. And when paid family leave is explained, they're like, wait a minute, why is that not a conservative idea? We love that idea. And the polling bears that out. 84% of the country wants paid family leave. 74% of Republicans want paid family leave. Okay, so then I started to realize, oh, no. Some of these guys are just misdirected populists. They got pushed out by the Democratic Party that's so authoritarian, so pro-establishment, etc. And then they went in the wrong direction, but some of them have good intent. Now, we can argue over the percentages. And
that was going to be my question. What percentage of MAGA people do you think has good intent?
Yeah, it's impossible for me to know. I'll make it up. In terms of like the lost tribe of populists, you're going to be surprised at the number, but I think that might be as high as 15% in the right wing. Okay. I
can accept that. That doesn't shock me. I mean, I don't agree. I think it's lower, but let's say it's 15%. Let's say that that still means that 85%.
No, hold on, Mark. Sorry. Let me be clear. When you say, so I was going to clarify further. Right. There's, 50, whatever the number is, 50% or so are the old school MAGA that right? And you're familiar with. Like, so Trump says it, yes.
White nationalists, racist, evangelical, Trump cult supporters.
Yeah, I wouldn't use all those adjectives for the whole 50% at all, right? But I understand, do some of those folks exist on that end of the spectrum? Of course.
Not some. I mean, some is, it's not some. That is the organizing logics around MAGA were white nationalism, were anti-blackness, were xenophobia. I mean, Make America Great Again, even as a title, even as a label, even as a framework, is about a certain kind of appeal to a certain kind of American narrative. Whether you think it's Make America Great Again like 1800s, or whether you mean it as Trump says he means it in the Reagan era. Either way, you're talking about shrinking government. You're talking about, at least the government we care about, expanding, except for, military and police and stuff like that. You're talking about taking away the social safety net. You're talking about stripping away some of the most important institutions like the Department of Education, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this is the core organizing logic around it. And for Trump, it begins really with birtherism, and then it emerges into build a wall. I mean, this is the organizing logic. People who put on those hats believe this stuff. I mean, these aren't just Tea Party members who are just lean conservative.
Yeah, Mark, I think it's more complicated than that. So just to finish the earlier thought, and then I'll get to that point. So there's a good 35% or 35, 40%. These are such made up numbers, but that to me are like, they think they mean well, for sure. I mean, look, of course, everybody thinks they mean well, but I mean, like, right? They're not. They don't have any kind of white supremacist agenda. They're not necessarily misogynist or something. They might have old stereotypes in their head.
Why do you believe that's true? Again, we're both conjecturing here, but why do you believe that's true?
Yeah, because I've interacted with them. And I think that what we've done is that we've gone into our bubbles and we both think that each side is so evil that you can't talk to them. And they feel the same way about us, right? But to the point that you were making about, the origin of MAGA. So the reason why I say it's a little bit more complicated than that and nuanced is because what's the origin of the Republican Party, the modern Republican Party, not the old one, not the party of Lincoln, et cetera. I actually wrote about this in my book, Justice is Coming. I have a chapter called Why Republicans Suck. So I was not unclear about it, right? And so I explained that when I was a kid, I grew up a Republican because my dad was a small businessman, et cetera, and we believed the story that mainstream media told us about a shining city on a hill and Reagan's speeches about that, right? And then when I realized that the Republican Party the modern Republican Party was built on the Southern strategy, I felt lied to in a big way, a giant way. Like if I thought the Republican Party was based on racism and hatred and I'm Muslim, why would I support them? That doesn't make any sense, right? And the Southern strategy was so explicit, so clear. We are going to get the racist voters in the South that the Democratic Party left behind when they passed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act under Johnson, right? So that's the basis for the modern Republican Party along with greed. And so I'm super clear on that. So MAGA is not, the origin you're talking about, 2016, is not that different than what that party was anyway, right? So, yeah, so I get that. But these days, like that still remains. But if you talk to those people, they don't think that they're racist or sexist at all, right? And so I know that
most racists don't, though.
Yeah. So look, I've seen guys who say, "No, I'm not racist. I had a black person in the house the other day, and I even let him use the bathroom."
Exactly.
That's so like that way of thinking is so racist, and you don't know it, brother, right? So like, I got it, right? But now there's a whole heap of people that were just pushed out by the Democratic Party. They hate the establishment. Democrat became more established. But they hate us on the culture wars. And on the culture wars, it gets super messy because part of the reaction to what happened with the MAGA and making America great again, to your point, Mark, is that there was this feeling of, oh no, we're going to lose power. Now, that doesn't consciously come out as that guy saying, I'm afraid black people are going and brown people are going to take over. That's why I'm supporting white supremacy and et cetera. They don't say that, right? But there's cultural movements. So the cultural movement of white America was like, we're getting over the edge here. We're about to lose the majority. And then we're in a world of hurt, right? And you have this instinctual cultural reaction. And that's kind of what you sense with the beginning of MAGA, right? And then, by the way, but let's be fair, our side, I think, and we could debate this too, I think we went too far. And so we went so maximalist that we lost the majority of Americans. And so Republicans, when they started saying identity politics, that was a trick in the beginning because what's the Southern strategy? Identity politics, right?
Just so our audience understands, when you say we went too far, what would be an example of going too far?
Yeah. Let's take a couple of things, right? So I'm 100% in favor of trans rights. Every show I go on, and at that event, I knew it was a little risky, but I asked them to say, look, trans people are American citizens, and they should get 100% of the same constitutional rights as we do. And most of the time they agree, so that's great, right? That crowd was a little bit more mixed. It was about 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 agreeing, 1/3, right? And so, but on our end, when we say trans people must play in professional sports, right? The league shouldn't have a choice. But wait a minute, that's not where the American people are. And I don't even agree with that. And then people look at that and go, okay, wait, now do you feel
like that's a dominant issue of our side, of the left?
No, there's two things that happen there, Mark. So the right attacks first. Let's be clear about that, right? They like trans people are minding their business. Now, maybe culturally they're becoming more and more dominant. Our side is becoming more and more dominant, and it's starting to grate on the right wing, et cetera. But then the right wing passes laws, right, saying, "Hey, this against trans people, that against trans people."
Right. Well, that's my point.
Yeah,
that's my point. It's like that's a right wing issue. That's a solution in search of a problem. The right started making up all these laws and rules and saying, "Oh my God," as if the left were as if that were a priority issue for the left. And then the left speaks a little bit about it, but I don't. And then it becomes the left has gone too far. They're out of control. And it's like, well, no, the right is doing that. It seems like you're almost echoing that right wing talking point.
So look, here's the example I use. So as I said at the AmFest event, I'm what they would consider extreme left on gun control, right? So I don't think guns should even be allowed in a house. If you have a gun in the house, you're much more likely to die from the gun. Okay. But I know that my position cannot pass, right? I'm going to have to convince people a lot more before I could begin to defend that position in a way that's logical. Like I can defend it all day long, but I defend it in terms of running on that or engaging in that fight. Right. Yeah. So on the trans issues, the right wing is the one that baited us, right? They tried it, banning trans people in the military. That wasn't that popular. They tried the bathrooms. That wasn't that popular. Going after their core constitutional rights wasn't popular at all. And then, so they went all the way to the outer edge, trying to find a place where we'll fall into their trap. So that's where we ran into professional sports, some of the terminology we were using, birthing people, etc. And then gender reassignment surgery, pre-18 years old. These are very unpopular positions. I don't happen to agree with any of those positions, as it turns out. But even if I did,
but they're also not dominant. I just want to be clear; they're also not our dominant positions. Most people aren't. So even as we say it right now, it sounds as if the left has gone too far and the right is just being more reasonable. When the left isn't saying this stuff in general.
No, but Mark, that's the key. So when the right wing came in and attacked on those issues, and they went further and further out, there's a line where I would have drawn the line, even if I held those positions and said, look, guys, we're not going to win on those. I would say to the right wing or to anyone to make it super clear, we're not going to win on those issues. We got more work to do in convincing the American people to be on our side. But there's no point in debating it because we're not arguing it, right? But we didn't do that. And then when you get to the left, again, the left is not a monolith. The left is gigantic and has a lot of different parts of it. But in this case, a lot of left-wing activists online were like, no, this is, we fight and we die on this hill. Because if you give 1 inch, that means you're surrendering. And no, we always go maximalist. And so you could tell in the reaction, Mark, because when Anna and I said, yeah, we don't agree with those, for example, those 3 things, right? People said, no, you're a right winger, you're a traitor. Some said Nazi, etc. And well, that's not productive or helpful at all. And so then it became, oh my God, the left is digging in even more on this position. And I'm like, get out of the room. That this is not helpful. Not only to forget the Democratic Party, it's not helpful to trans people because you're now walking backwards and you're endangering them more. And here we are. We're back to now debating bathrooms because we lost so badly on that issue when we didn't need to be in that fight at all. Stop falling into their traps. And I give you the gun example because I want you to I want to show you guys, me too, right? Like it's not like I wouldn't do it with my own positions. Here, I give you another example about my own identity, like Muslims, right? And this one's absurd because nobody asked for this law or anything, but I use it as an extreme example of like if I had done this, right? So I want to protect Muslims, Americans, and our rights 100%. There's no negotiation over this whole deporting, denaturalizing nonsense. We'll fight it 200%. Fight the Muslim ban 200%. There was a brother up in Minnesota a while back, and he sued the grocery store that he was working at because he said, I shouldn't have to handle bacon and pork at the checkout. And I was like, no, brother, that's your job. Okay. If you got those concerns, go take another job, right? And if we had, let's say, dug in on that position, again, I grant we didn't, that was not a big political issue, but if we had dug in and said, no, maximalist, that's it, Muslims should be allowed to work in the grocery store and not do this, we would have lost. And I would have said, no, don't do that.
Yeah,
rights backwards, and I don't want you to walk my rights backwards. Do you see?
I
what I'm
got
saying?
you, but Jack, you're taking things that didn't happen and using them as examples to justify something that did happen. You're taking counterfactual, these hypothetical counterfactuals, and saying, well, yeah, if we had done this, this would be exactly why. This would exactly prove the right's point. But things didn't happen. But let me just take a step back because
No, I'm just saying that even if it affects me, I still have the right. Like I still have the same strategy. Is my point. That's all.
For sure. So I guess part of there are a few things you said that I think are really interesting. One is both sides are against the establishment, right? That these two issues. I think that the challenge is that argument presumes that the establishment is something other than right wing. We have two right wing parties that are fighting each other. Now, I'm not pretending that Democrats and Republicans are exactly the same. I'm not pretending that the Green Party and the Libertarians are exactly the same. But these are two right wing parties. And so when you say, well, they both want to fight against the establishment, I think you might be right that they both in their minds want to do that. That's true. Similarly, they both hate mainstream media, right? But if and they clapped when you said that. But the difference is when they say mainstream media, they're thinking CNN and MSNBC. They don't see OANN as establishment media or mainstream media. They don't see News Nation as establishment media or mainstream media. So you two aren't talking about the same thing. So even if you're using the same language, you two have very different ideas about what the establishment is. That crowd in that room, if you told them to get rid of establishment media, they'd be okay with Fox News living. While you and I both know that Fox News is establishment media. It's just it's just the ultra right part of it. I'm saying that to say that just because those people in that room say we want to get rid of the establishment, we want to tear down the establishment, they don't want to tear down right wing anything. They want to tear down the parts of the establishment that allow you and I to exist and allow the most vulnerable people in this country to be safe. So to me, it doesn't feel like a fair or good faith argument to say, well, it's okay for us to come together. It's okay for me to be on stage with them. It's okay for me to be in this space because we both want to get rid of the establishment. No, y'all don't. Not the same way.
Yeah, Mark, I understand what you're saying, and I agree in part, but I largely disagree. So let me break it down. So do they mean mainstream media and establishment politicians, including their own side? Yes, they definitely do. Do they mean Fox News? No, they don't. You're right about that, right? So, but that doesn't. But what I say, first of all, we're not going to get everything we want right out of the gate, right? We're not going to come in and go, hey, we'd like to tear down Fox News, and they're going to go, yeah, of course not, right? So, but what I do say is, hey, we hate mainstream media. Yes, agreement. And I say, look, and this establishment. So Democrats and Republicans play good cop, bad cop, but they're actually the uniparty. Republicans go, yay, totally agree, right? So by the way, that's a giant agreement. I mean, we're just brushing past an enormous agreement. And then we get to mainstream media, and I go, MSNBC and Fox News play good cop, bad cop. Now, that's the first time they've ever heard that, right? Because they think they've been told their whole lives, Fox News, right-wing media in general, good guys, MSNBC, bad guys, right?
Absolutely.
But remember, our own voters, Democratic voters, think the same way, right? So you find a 74-year-old person watching MSNBC Morning Joe every morning. She thinks MSNBC is the good guys and Fox News is the bad guys. No, it's good cop, bad cop. They're both the bad guys. Okay. And so that's something we have to introduce to our voters and to their voters. So by having those conversations, I am in a lot of ways introducing that thought to them for the first time. And that's part of why mainstream media banned me in the first place. I'm banned on CNN and MSNBC because I think and Fox News, I think they got the sense, oh, this guy's going to convince our audience that we're not here to help them. And that's true. They're not here to help them, right? But since the right wing already did a revolt against their establishment, they're actually more open to that idea. And sometimes they'll even criticize Fox News probably for all the wrong reasons. So there's a lot of work to be done there, but it's not, no, they're totally disingenuous and they don't mean it at all. Look, again, they tell you exactly what they mean, the voters, the MAGA voters. They're not hiding the ball at all. So they really do hate the establishment. Here's another example. Today, a giant fight between the online right-wingers and Dan Crenshaw. And so who's right about that? The online right, which we're like more worried about in some ways, like more hardcore MAGA. But wait a minute, they're right. Dan Crenshaw is wrong. Dan Crenshaw is defending all of his donors, etc. I was on with Dan Crenshaw on Piers Morgan, and there was Vinny from Patrick Bet-David's show, very populist right-wing guy, and we ganged up on Dan Crenshaw because he agreed with me more than he agreed with Crenshaw. So these old lines are beginning to break down. And so in a moment like that, that's when we really need to be talking to each other rather than just saying, okay, everybody there is a white supremacist. And for them, everybody on our side is a weirdo, fringe, whatever they think of us.
Would I be hyperbolic to say half the people in that room at that event believe that white people are superior?
Yeah, it's not a great way of framing it, Mark.
How about 25%?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but since they don't consciously think that, they're going to be repelled by you saying that. I don't care about them. I don't care.
I don't care about them being repelled. I guess. I guess what I struggle with is if you're a white supremacist if you are a white supremacist in this country, that's your tribe. That's where you go. You don't go anywhere else. Everybody in that room is not a white supremacist, but every white supremacist is probably in that is in that room. If you get metaphorically speaking, that is home for them. That is a safe space for them. Charlie Kirk, who's someone you shared the stage with, would you agree that Charlie Kirk is a white supremacist?
I would certainly agree that he has said very harmful things about.
No, but let's not do the mainstream media thing. Do you believe he's a white supremacist?
No.
Tell me why.
Because when you say white supremacist, you mean someone who has ingrained thoughts that lead to maintaining structural racism in this country, and from time to time literally says things that are racist that maintain that structure. When you say white supremacists, they think you mean that they go home and put on a hood and look. Yeah,
but I'm not asking you but I'm not asking you if Charlie Kirk meets his own definition of white supremacy. You just very articulately laid out what a white supremacist actually is, and based on what a white supremacist actually is, do you think he's a white supremacist?
I don't think it's helpful to use that word. I'm not going to use it, that phrase. I think we need to get past that kind of phrasing, because that just puts up a giant wall between us.
Between us and the white supremacists.
Yeah, but Mark, here, let me give you an example. Again, using my own identity, and this time very real, right? So I can go into a room and they can mispronounce my name. I'd say racist, okay? But wait a minute, my name is C, pronounced like a J. How the hell is anybody supposed to know that? Okay, I can go to a room.
Yeah, but these are straw, that's a straw man, Jay. No one is saying that. What they say is when they say Muslims are rapists, when they say Muslims are evil, that's the racist thing that we get outraged by, not them not pronouncing Cenk Uygur right.
No.
If someone says Muslims are rapists, would you then say that they're racist?
So, Mark, it's how am I dealing with that situation is the question, okay? So I started out with the really mild one of my name, right?
Yeah.
But when you go down the gradations of different ways that you could discriminate and be hateful towards Muslims, you're going to get to violent, savages, terrorists, et cetera, et cetera. And what's the best way to deal with that? Now, what I have done in the past, and what a lot of folks are still doing today is call them racist, etc. And from time to time, if somebody calls me an anti-Semite on TV, I do call them a racist back. Okay, so because I've never seen anyone.
He who smelt it dealt it.
Yeah, because I've never seen anyone who engages is on the Israel side that just automatically, reflexively, without even checking any facts, called the other person an anti-Semite, and they didn't think that Muslim lives were worthless, right? So I can't understand that any better than I do, having been the group that is most smeared in this country. I mean, yes, black people have had it much worse in this country.
I don't know about the most smeared, but let me ask you, just to pause you for a second, because again, I'm not sure I understand. Is there anybody in this country that you're willing to call a white supremacist, or do you just completely rule that word out?
No, of course. If they declare themselves a white supremacist, everything they say is about white supremacy. So, for example, Nick Fuentes is an anti-Semite and a white supremacist. That's not hard to suss out. That's just defining feature. So to finish my point about Muslims, but instead now, Mark, when I go into a room, I start talking to them, and then halfway through the conversation, when they begin to like me a little bit, then I tell them that I'm Muslim. And I say, look, I know, Trump said we should ban all Muslims from the country in 2016 when he was running, right? So how am I supposed to react to that? And now we're at least have had some common ground and some bonding. So then they feel like, hey, wait a minute, maybe not all Muslims are terrorists, right?
You're one of the good ones.
Yeah. No, I get it. And And they might think one of the good ones, but then when they see 12, 18, etc., how are we going to break it down, Mark? Because if we just call them names, it's not going to work. It hasn't worked. I've tried it a million times.
No. But Jake, that's disingenuous. Calling someone who's white supremacist or Islamophobic, that thing, to reduce that to name calling is unfair to the person who's being harmed.
No. I'm not saying it's name calling and I hate you and blah, blah, and you're.
No, but you just said to call them names. We're not calling them names. We're identifying them by what they are.
Yeah, but Mark, tons of folks on the right wing are Islamophobic. But me going and calling them Islamophobic is not helpful. So that's why I'm saying. You're arguing a point that
I'm not making. That's a straw man. I've never suggested in this conversation that we should be going into rooms and calling these people what they are. That has nothing to do with what I was talking about. That's a straw man. What I was talking about was the fact that you're in the room with people who look at the world that way and what it means to be in the room with the people who look at the world that way. But if you're stipulating from the beginning that you don't necessarily agree that they're that thing, that's different. I'm not talking about how they self-identify. I'm not even talking about whether we point in the room and say, hey, white supremacist over there. Hey, sexist over there. Hey, transphobe over here. I'm not saying we got to do any of that. What I'm saying is that if we're walking into a room with people whose ideologies and beliefs are consistent with white supremacy, with Islamophobia, with anti-Semitism, etc., we have to at least question what the possibility is of reaching a political alliance if at the core they don't think we're humans. If at the core they don't think we deserve the same thing, regardless of what we call them. And so if we only focus on the tactic of how to engage a white supremacist, we lose sight of the fact that they're still white supremacists and that they don't want the same things we want, regardless of what they say.
Now, Mark, this is a core disagreement. So if there's a room full of Islamophobes, I'm not going to A, not go in there, and B, I'm not going to call them Islamophobes. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to start to change minds very gradually, okay? And so I think that's a way better strategy. And yes, it endangers me maybe to go into a room filled with Islamophobes, but I'm going to do it again and again and again, okay? And so it, like, even you saying, okay, half the room is white supremacist, but Mark, so you're saying they believe in systemic, like they are part of a system that executes racism in the country. Yes, but we all kind of are. But so calling all Americans white supremacists is not helpful.
But again, Jake, you're holding on to a point that I'm not making. You keep debating the argument about whether or not we should call them white supremacists. Let me stipulate again. I'm not making the case about whether or not we should call them white supremacists. We don't have to engage that part.
You're calling them internally white supremacists and saying, why are you going into a room with white supremacists?
That's the second straw man. My debate isn't whether or not we go in the room. It's how we go in the room, what rooms we go in, and what we do and what we say about the people in that room when we're in the room.
Okay, great. Let's have that conversation. Right.
So you went on stage with Charlie Kirk, for example, who, just to use your description of him, says, not white. We're not going to use the white supremacist language, because for the purpose of this conversation, it's not that helpful. But certainly he consistently advocates positions that certainly strengthen white supremacy. He certainly advocates positions that strengthen anti-Black racism. He certainly advocates positions that advance Islamophobia, that push against women's reproductive rights, just based on the things that he has said and done. Would you agree with everything I just said?
Largely.
Okay. So you're on a stage with someone like that.
Yeah.
Can you see at least how you being on a stage like that could make someone who trusts you because of all the great work you've done believe that he's not so bad? And maybe the positions he's taking are legitimate ones. Could you at least see how being in the room with him without offering any substantive critique of him in that space could be problematic?
But wait a minute, I defended left-wing positions, so I don't accept your premise.
I said a substantive critique of his behavior, what he's doing. I didn't say you didn't have a critique of it, right.
I disagreed with him on trans housing. So again, I don't accept the premise. But
okay, so let me restate it because I don't want to operate disingenuously. Can you see how it could be problematic to someone? Or let me say it differently. Could you see the problem? Can you see any potential problems in standing on a stage with someone who has such positions that are so antithetical, not just to yours, but to the interests of the most vulnerable people in this country, could you see how you might actually legitimize him in a way that's dangerous to our side, not to the country, but to the people who are confused, to the people in the middle, to the people who are still trying to figure it out, or to the people on the left who are vulnerable, who are susceptible to a switch?
Yeah. So there's two parts to that question. So on the one part, can I see it? Yes. I can see why people think that. And I'll end on top of it, Mark, that not only are they worried, hey, is this legitimizing him? You're in the room with a person like this, etc. But we've also seen a pattern, right? We've seen Dave Rubin and we've seen Tulsi Gabbard and we've seen others. And first they go in the room, then they agree with a little bit, and then they agree with everything. And then all of a sudden they're all right-wingers. And then while still pretending to be left-wing and saying, oh, well, me as a liberal or a progressive or a left-winger is telling you you're right about all the issues, right? And so I get that's why people are concerned. So that's not crazy. I get it, right? But then the second half of what you're saying, I don't agree with at all, right? So does that legitimize them? Well, first of all, they won the election. So they won the popular vote. They won all the swing states. Like, we have it in our mind that
I specifically said not to the entire country, but to the people on our side, specifically in anticipation of you saying they're already legitimate and won the popular election. Again, yeah. I'm not saying that you're.
Am I legitimizing them to our side?
What I'm saying is there are people who are going to vote for them, right? There are people, majority of whom are in this country are going to vote for, say, Donald Trump, right? But if you stand on stage with Donald Trump, that strengthens Donald Trump's position. It doesn't undermine it.
No, it totally depends. So, for example, I interviewed David.
Do you think you strengthen Charlie Kirk's position? Let's not be hypothetical. Do you think you strengthened Charlie Kirk's position by standing next to him? Do you think you had no effect, or do you think you hurt his position?
Well, first of all, I didn't go there to hurt or help his position.
That's not your intention is irrelevant. I'm asking about the consequence of your choice, not the intention of your choice.
I don't think it had anything. I don't think it helped him 1%. Not at all.
Do you think
I think this idea that if you stand next to them, that helps them is absurd. Totally, utterly absurd. Because on that logic, that's it. We never stand next to them. We never talk to them. And we're so
again,
we never talk to them. Oh, we didn't legitimize them. We didn't help them. That's nonsense.
Let me ask a broader question. Do you think you advanced right-wing interests by going there? Do you think you undermine right-wing interests by going there?
Well, first of all, it's not binary, but I helped left-wing interests. Definitely. Okay?
How so? Tell me how.
So every time they say yes to cutting the Pentagon, every time they say yes to paid family leave, every time they say yes to conflict of interest rules, et cetera, that I could go on, that are all left-wing positions. Does that mean it's going to happen overnight? Of course not. Does that mean that it's immediately going to go to their leader and they're going to introduce it next week? Of course not. But is it helping for them to think, well, paid family leave, that does sound pretty good. Hey, cutting the Pentagon, that makes sense. I bet there is a lot of waste and abuse. That helps left-wing positions. The good news is they're no longer left-wing positions. The right wing agrees. Their voters agree with those positions. Take the win. Take yes for an answer. Instead, the other ideology is white supremacists. I'm never talking to them. That'll show them. That won't help them at all. If I talk to them, it'll help them. Really? Because they won the election without any of our help. None of us talked to them, and they won anyway. So how's that strategy working? It's working terribly. And then we look extreme because we won't talk to anyone. And we just keep pushing everyone out of our party, everyone out of our side, and saying, I am morally superior. And guess what happens? America doesn't like that. They think it's arrogant and obnoxious. And instead of having a conversation with people, we're putting them in buckets of white supremacists, Islamophobe. God, America hates that. We got to cut that crap out.
I disagree. I mean, the idea of a moral agenda or moral issues was coined by the right. They absolutely think they have moral superiority over the left on issues around babies, on issues around prayer in school. To suggest that the left thinks they have moral superiority and that somehow stands in contrast to the right's position.
It's not in contrast. They both think they have moral superiority.
So if everybody thinks that, how is America upset with the left for it?
Because the right goes, oh, you agree with me 5%? Come on in. I'm willing to have that conversation. I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to do that. The left goes, you disagree with me 5%? Nazi. And then, okay, then America goes, all right, then I know which side to go on. Because this guy says the slightest disagreement, I'm a racist. I'm an Islamophobe, I'm a Nazi, etc. I don't like that guy. The other guy says, you have some opinion, you have tons of opinions I don't agree with, but you're welcome here. It's not rocket science. It's just politics. Of course, the side that's more welcoming is going to get more voters. And that's exactly what happened. That's why they won the popular vote when we thought it wasn't possible. So stop blaming everyone and start listening to people. So when I listen to the right wing, yeah, they still had tons of opinions I don't agree with and I think are problematic. But then I did hear opinions. Here, I'll give you another one. Why did I go to Charlie Kirk in particular? Because when I interviewed him at the RNC, I thought we were going to have a brawl, right? And he comes in and sits down and then agrees that BlackRock buying all of the residential homes in the country is a terrible idea and that the government should stop private equity, Wall Street, from doing that. That's amazing. I've never heard a right-winger say that. Every time I talk to the right wing,
do you think that's a mainstream right-wing position? Do you think that's even a close to mainstream right-wing position?
Yes, among their voters, that is totally mainstream. Among their politicians, no, they're just as corrupt as the Democrats and the Republicans in Congress are the most corrupt people in the whole country. So they both love BlackRock. I mean, you Democrat and Republican politicians would have an exercise in who could, pleasure them quicker. But the right-wing voters don't want their houses bought up either. And nobody outside of me and Anna know that because nobody else is willing to talk to them. And that's, in fact, when we say, they go, oh, no way, they're lying, you're lying, everybody's grifting. No, they're not lying and they're not grifting. They don't want their homes bought up by private equity, and we don't want our homes bought up by private equity. For God's sake, let's talk to each other enough to find out where the agreement is.
You identify as pro-Palestine, correct?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Would you go to a conference similar to this for Zionists?
Yeah, I definitely. 100%. And I've done very similar things already. Yes.
And you sit on stage with Yoav Galant and Bibi Netanyahu and talk about the points of agreement.
Oh my God, I would love to do that. Yes.
Okay.
Because then I could get to challenge Netanyahu and Galant to their face. That would be amazing.
Do you think that you challenge these people to their faces to the extent that you would Galant and Netanyahu? Because I didn't see a lot of challenging.
Yeah, but you're seeing one snippet there. First of all,
that's what I'm asking. I'm asking because I don't want to presume.
So Mark, two things about that. Number one, this was a venue where we were talking about a shocking new development where sometimes the left and the right agree. But I clearly said, and everybody in that room knows, and go ask the right winger. They all know, no, Cenk's left wing. He's not MAGA, right? And so why do they know that? Because I've been on dozens of shows.
No, but I don't want you to avoid the question. Did you challenge them with the intensity that you ostensibly would with in the Zionist example? Did you challenge them to their faces?
On many of the right-wing shows, on many topics, I do.
No, yes. At this event,
that's not what we were doing.
So no, you didn't.
No, we did challenge. You heard me challenge, but we didn't have a fight. So I'm sorry if you thought we should have had a fight, but we didn't.
No. What happened here is when I asked you if you challenged them to your faces, you said, well, people only saw a snippet, which would imply to the viewer that had we seen more, we would have seen more.
No. I said you only saw a snippet of my right-wing, my appearances on right-wing shows, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh no, I've seen a bunch of your appearances on right-wing shows. So there was no challenge here. This was more of a
no challenge. We clearly laid out places where we disagree. We just didn't fight over the things that we disagree on.
Okay. There's a difference between disagreeing and challenging people on their position. For example, I could say, Netanyahu, I disagree with your position on Greater Israel. That's different than saying you've killed hundreds of thousands of people, right? I suspect if you're on stage with Netanyahu, you say, hey, you've killed hundreds of thousands of people. You prosecuted a genocide. What you're doing is against international law. You would dig in his ass. Is that fair to say?
First of all, it depends on the context, but very likely, yes.
But you're saying there's context where you wouldn't do that. Fine, fair enough. That troubles me, but I'm saying comparably, did you do something comparable in this space?
So in this case, we didn't go to set out to do a debate. If we went to do a debate,
I'm not talking about a debate. No, hold on. That's not what I asked you. I'm saying, did you confront them on the? You might not be debating Netanyahu, but if I see Netanyahu and I'm on a stage with him, I'm digging in his ass whether we're here for a debate or not, because it's the principled thing to do. Did you tear down the right for all of the problems, all of the harm, all of the damage they've done? Did you do anything that would succeed?
No, Mark, that's a totally unreasonable standard. So you're saying in every
single
appearance that I need to tear them down. Well, that defeats the point of beginning to have a conversation on the things that we agree on. If in the midst of that conversation we get to a disagreement, then yes, sometimes we wind up yelling at each other. I was on Tim Pool's show and I got into a huge fight with one of his hosts. And I don't care. I defend our positions every time. There is no Rubenesque, oh, sir, you are right, sir. Gay people are the problem, sir. There's none of that. None of that. But if you're asking me to pick a fight every single time and do it vociferously every single time, that is an unrealistic and ridiculous.
I agree that it's unrealistic to pick a fight. But again, I never made that claim. That's another straw man. What I'm more asking about, I guess what I'm saying is, if you go there and you say, hey, look, here's the stuff we agree on. Let's move this stuff forward. Yeah, you didn't say, hey, you're awful on gay people, but what you did say is, hey, we agree on trans people. So
no, we don't agree on trans people. Because I said, don't we, like, do you guys agree with constitutional rights for trans people? Every time I've done that on a right-wing show, all the hosts said yes. In this case, 2/3 of the audience said yes. About a third didn't, but just my read of it. And then Charlie said that no, he doesn't think housing is a constitutional right. So I said I disagree with that.
So you agree with trans people having housing? Fine. That wasn't really what I meant, but I don't want to get distracted by that. My bigger point is pointing to the right and saying, hey, here's where we agree. The right doesn't seem to have a problem getting the stuff they want accomplished. They don't seem to have a problem advancing policies. So to me, to go in that space and I
think right-wing voters are just as screwed as us. What did Trump deliver for them in the first term? Nothing. He just gave corporate tax cuts. So, like, they're not getting what they want either. And I'm super curious how they're going to react if Trump screws them again this time. Is it the old MAGA and I'm totally wrong and they all bow their heads? If he invades Panama, all of a sudden they love war, then I'm wrong. And then I'll be happy to say I'm wrong. But if it turns out that he continues to screw them and they rebel a little bit, well, that'll be an interesting phenomenon, right? But I don't know what's going to happen yet. We made up the percentages in the beginning. We'll see what the reality is when the rubber hits the road, but it hasn't yet.
Have you received any money for this?
None.
No one's paid you to appear?
None. Zero. None.
You appeared at this conference completely for free?
Yes.
Okay. Have you been offered any kind of positions, any kind of consultancies, any kind anything from right-wing organizations?
None. Zero.
Okay. I'm not asking because I think you have. I actually don't think you have. I just want to put that on. I want that on the record so that there's no confusion.
Yep.
What do you say to the person who says, and I'm not doing the hypothetical journalist thing. People in the comments have said it. I just don't know, specifically their names, but you can scroll through and see. Yeah, you're not getting money from this directly, but you know what side of the bread is buttered. You know that taking the positions you're taking will have you on talk shows. Your views will go up on the channel. You'll get more, you'll get a wider audience. If the right wingers who love to click on stuff and love to watch media, that this is still a strategic career move. What do you say to that?
Totally and utterly absurd. So number one, if you want to be real, of the two things, the theories that I talked about earlier about us, we're right-wing grifters and getting money for it. Oh, your audience is dying off, etc. We can't be both, right? Well, the reality is this has cost us a good number of paid subscribers. We're not unaware of that. And it has cost us in terms of the live show, etc. The number is there. We're not unaware of that. We're actually doing something really bold and courageous, which is that we're willing to risk our not only money, but the loyalty of our audience to do what we perceive to be the right thing. And Mark, it's the same exact thing I did when I challenged Obama from the left. Tons of paid subscribers left, audience left. No, Obama's a saint. You can't do that. And that was early on in his administration after we helped him so much to get elected against McCain. We do not do audience capture, and we challenge our own audience, open minds, open hearts. So the challenge, this idea of grifting, I know where it comes from. Again, I'm not saying, oh my God, nobody's ever going to do that or nobody's ever done that. No, people have done that. I get it. I get
it every day.
Yeah, but in order to make that charge, and if somebody in the audience is concerned, that's totally fine, right? But when other left-wing hosts say they already have done that, that's just a lie. And so that is deeply problematic that we have a bunch of hosts out there saying things that aren't even close to true. They never checked. They never asked. At least you asked, Mark. And I appreciate you asking. So people have to be concerned about where they're getting their news. And unfortunately, some folks on our side also have bad intent.
I think That's important for you to state. Charlie Kirk is somebody, obviously, you're okay sharing stage with. We talked about, we contrasted him to Nick Fuentes. Would you share a stage with Nick Fuentes?
No. In fact, I was on this Spaces on X, and he joined, and I left. And so, yeah, there's a line, right? And I
what's the line?
I often grapple with that line myself, right?
What is the line for you, right? And I know it's provisional. We all fluctuate, but what is the line in general for you?
Yeah, line is when your main thesis is white supremacy, racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, etc. Like that's what Nick's known for. That's what he does, right?
Right. He's a Nazi. He's like a literal Nazi.
I mean, I think he says he's a neo-Nazi, and I'll take him at his word, right? So, or he defends Nazis, right? That's good enough. No, I have no interest, right?
So I guess that's where I get confused. I saw this from 1023 where you called Trump a Nazi. But you share a stage with Trump and share a stage at an event that supports the movement of a Nazi. And what's the difference?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the title or if I actually said that, but it's in quotes, so maybe I did.
I mean, I have the video. I can play it.
Yeah, okay. No, if you say it, I know that some people are sending around videos. I believe it. So what I tried to do was I tried not to call him a Nazi or Hitler, but I did. Did
you think he was a Nazi, or were you being hyperbolic?
No, I must have been hyperbolic then because I never.
You never thought Trump was a Nazi?
No.
So then I'm even more confused because this conversation you were talking about how we shouldn't flamethrow and call people names and call everybody who's a racist or racist. You don't even want us to call actual white supremacists white supremacists. Why would you call them a Nazi?
No, I'm saying that I must have that must have been hyperbolic because I tried hard not to call him a Nazi, so that must have been a mistake. So and here's my distinction, and I've explained this many times. I'm worried about Trump's fascism because he showed it to us. So on January 6th, but before January 6th as well, he did a fake elector plot. He then agitated people to go bum rush the Capitol. The point wasn't to keep the Capitol. The point was to delay the proceedings so he could have his fake electors steal the election. So I've been super clear about that. That's why I hated Trump. That's why I fought tooth and nail against Trump. So those are fascist tendencies, and I have no problem calling it fascism. But it is not Nazi. Nazi is a completely different thing where they killed 13 million people and had death camps. Trump didn't have death camps. He didn't kill those people. But for the right,
neither did Charlie Kirk.
Yeah,
I mean, neither did Nick Fuentes, but you're still comfortable calling him a Nazi.
No, but Nick Fuentes thought that he defends the Nazis, so that's a giant difference.
So that's the line for you. You have to explain. And I agree, by the way, that Nick Fuentes is an evil person. He's a Nazi, etc. You're saying the person, anything short of self-identifying as a Nazi and openly supporting Hitler, you're okay sharing the stage with, it sounds like.
Again, Mark, you're framing it in a way that sounds extreme. So it's.
I want you to consider that maybe what you're saying is extreme, though. I mean, I might be describing exactly what you're saying. It just doesn't sound as good coming back to you.
So no, not at all, Mark. So a couple of things. Benjamin Netanyahu is a terrorist. He's a war criminal. He committed genocide. But I would share a stage with him because of all the things that we discussed before. The ability to have the other side have a voice. You know, whether you challenge, don't challenge, you challenge screaming, you challenge whispering. At least I give the Palestinians a voice by being on that stage. When I go on the right-wing shows, at least I give the left wing a voice by being there. And so if you frame it as, oh, look at Cenk Uygur happily going on stage with a terrorist Netanyahu, then I seem like a bad guy. If you say Cenk Uygur giving voice to the Palestinians by being on the same stage as Netanyahu, I seem like a good guy. It's all in the framing. It's in the framing. So when you get to the
I disagree. It's not just in that suggests that your behavior is neutral and the framing is what makes it right or wrong. I'm saying that you can actually make different choices on that stage.
So, Mark, then let me ask you back. So,
Sure.
Do you think that as we were talking about populism on both sides and rebelling against the establishment, and that was the theme of it that was supposed to last about 20 minutes, that I should have done a sidewinder and derailed the whole thing by attacking him on his previous quotes about black people?
Not necessarily, no. But again, that's not necessarily the only way to be courageous in that space. That's not the only way to be principled in that space. That's not the only way to do important resistance work in that space. You could pull up an old quote, or you could speak to the bigger system. You could speak to the bigger establishment. It's one thing that's, to give you a concrete example, you sat on that stage and said, we all, the left and the right, we all hate establishment media. Right? We can agree that establishment media needs to go. Everybody claps. That's a great feel-good moment. But again, those people who leave that room, who are the dominant consumers of mainstream media, who are the dominant viewers of mainstream media, and who are controlled by people who are right-wing, they're going to walk away saying, yeah, we got to tear down mainstream media. And they're talking about CNN, and they're talking about MSNBC. Courageous is going on that stage and saying, look, I know y'all don't want to hear this, but Fox News is mainstream media too.
But I have said that on right-wing shows. So you're taking a 20-minute event here.
I'm not saying you've never said it. I'm saying in that we're talking about how to behave in this space, right? I'm sure you've said it a million times, but we're talking about right now how to behave in that space. And when I keep pointing out what you didn't do in that space, you kind of do the sleight of hand thing where then you talk about what you did somewhere else. I'm saying in this space, to answer your specific question you asked me, which is, should you have torn them down and brought up specific acts of racism or this other thing? I'm saying you don't necessarily have to do that or even make it so personal, right? Because I get how that could be a distraction. What you can do is say, hey, we all want to tear down mainstream media, establishment media. I'm with y'all. But let's be clear. Establishment media isn't just MSNBC and CNN. It's also Fox, which has been the voice of the right for decades now. It's OANN. It's all these things. All of this needs to be torn down. Yes, you could say that.
So, Mark, when I'm on a show like Patrick Bet David in the last 2 hours or 3 hours, we get into that stuff. And that's exactly what I say. Exactly what I say. Okay. So you're taking a 20-minute speech and go, not good enough. You didn't say it there. You didn't say it that one time. Okay. That's not what I'm doing. You're misrepresenting my position. My position isn't that in this single instance, you didn't do this one thing in a 20-minute space. My critique is that you're deploying now a strategy of entering these kinds of rooms and doing these kinds of things, and particularly these very public spectacles, right? Which is what conventions are: Democrat, Republican, left, right, whatever. They're all these public spectacles. And I'm saying that there's a significant danger in entering those spaces and not being significantly courageous. This isn't about nitpicking a particular thing you didn't do. This isn't about saying, well, you did 99, but there's the 100 when you missed. You're framing this as if we're nitpicking. And I'm saying, no, the actual logic of the strategy that you're articulating right now about how to move in these rooms, I'm saying is deeply problematic for left wing. I don't even understand what you're saying, Mark. Well, how is it problematic? You keep calling it problematic. Everybody keeps calling it problematic.
I'll tell you why.
Why? Like, they don't need us. Because we have this in our head that if we're in the room, okay, then everybody loves Nazis or some weirdo thing like that.
I'm not saying anything. Yeah, I don't know what you're
talking about. Like,
so let me answer you directly.
And you kiss their ass, then I see what you're saying. But if you clearly say these are left-wing positions, and you fight for them in the different shows, etc., and you try to get to common grounds where they agree with us, how could that possibly be a bad thing?
Because they're agreeing with you on terms that don't disrupt their actual worldview and won't change their politics. You're asking me.
How do you know that, Mark?
Because you're asking.
You're assuming it. And now I'm not stopped assuming it. It turns out a lot of their voters agree with us on like 40% of things. Right. We can actually get 40% of things done. Really, really important things. But we were too busy calling them white supremacists to ever get there.
Again, I don't know why we're still talking about calling them white supremacists. That's a straw man you created a long time ago. I'm not suggesting
it's not a straw man, Mark. You said it many times in the beginning. Anyway, go ahead.
No, hold on. To be clear, I said to you that I believe they're white supremacists. At no point in this conversation did I say you need to go in the room and call them such. In fact, I stipulate that I'm not asking you to do that. That I don't think you should do this. I keep saying that over and over again. This is not about calling them white supremacists. You also said I'm making an assumption. You're making a huge assumption by saying that you know that they're leaving there more open to left-wing positions. There's absolutely no evidence of that. So we're both speculating at that level. I agree that I don't know for sure. You don't know for sure. And unless you have some metric, there's no way to know that when that your appearance there had this impact that you're suggesting it does. Just like I can't prove that it didn't. So I'm saying I'll call that even. My point here, since you don't understand what I'm saying, is to use what you just said. To be clear, if someone walks into that room and they're sitting in the stands listening to you talk, and they already believe that just to use the mainstream media example, they believe that establishment media needs to go, but they also don't think Fox News is establishment media, right? They walk in thinking, get rid of CNN and MSNBC, keep Fox News, right? That's what they're thinking in the stands in this example, right? Because they don't think that's establishment media. Just like to your point, the person on the left is saying, get rid of Fox, keep MSNBC, fine, right? So that person doesn't realize Fox is that. When you sit on that stage and say, yeah, we can all agree to get rid of mainstream media. And Joe Sixpack in the stands claps and says, that's right. Even the lefty guy agrees with me.
So let me
let me just tie a bow on it. He now has even more reinforcement for his position that establishment media needs to go, but he's still never been told that the thing he thinks isn't establishment media, Fox News, isn't. So that's what I'm saying. But now he has more legitimacy to his wrong point because you didn't actually tell him that it's wrong.
No, totally disagree. So Mark, I can go in the room and have that same exact conversation with Joy Reid, right? And then everybody in the filled with left-wingers in that case, right? And people walk out thinking, oh, yeah, we got to get rid of Fox News and maybe CNN, but definitely not MSNBC. But that's not my responsibility to go to convince them that, no, you also have to hate MSNBC. Now, I will tell them that if they ask me. I will tell them that in the span of a larger and longer conversation. I will tell the left the same exact thing that I'm telling the right, and I would tell the right the same thing I'm telling the left. So just because we didn't clarify Fox News or OAN in that conversation doesn't mean we shouldn't have that conversation or that it somehow helped Charlie Kirk's nefarious plans. So if his plans are to get rid of establishment media, that's my plans. I hate establishment media. So if you say to me, oh, my God, but then if you say, Cenk, then what if they use it to get rid of everything but Fox News? But they didn't do that. That's a wild hypothetical. And if they did, I'd fight them tooth and nail, right? So, like, if they do things that we don't agree with, we fight. And so that's not that complicated.
Maybe we're talking about
super clear about that, right? But you're assuming what's in their head and what they assumed about what I said.
I'm not assuming what's in their head.
How that gave strength to Charlie Kirk, but none of those things actually happened. So, like,
we don't know what happened. No, again,
Mark,
no. We don't know what happened anymore in the sense of what I'm saying than what you're saying. You're almost, one would hear that and think that somehow I'm painting a hypothetical that's unprovable and yours has been demonstrably proven. What I'm saying is you made an argument in that room that didn't challenge Joe in the stands argument. I just painted a picture of Joe in the stands and his belief of mainstream media, and you didn't really respond to that. I'm saying Joe has no reason to believe that Fox News is establishment media based on what you said on that stage. Do you have a duty to tell him that? I think you do if your goal is to challenge establishment media, to not only challenge establishment media, but to challenge what he thinks is establishment media. If that's not your goal, then that's fine. But then that doesn't advance our interests.
Do you get that since I've done that on other shows, but it wasn't part of that 25-minute conversation, that's not a fair standard to hold me to, that I didn't debunk every thought that every right-winger in the stands had within that 25 minutes, that's a wildly unfair standard?
So I get what you just said, but what you just attributed to me is not what I said. I keep making point A, and then you keep sort of caricaturing my point.
The Fox News thing is like, why would I didn't even assume that they would think that it's not Fox News.
But you should.
That's Fox News, because that wasn't what the conversation was about, Mark. So you went really deep into that rabbit hole to come up with
No, I used your example. I literally read the transcript and went by the points you made. And again, I didn't say let's go in there and debunk every potential misconception people in the audience has. Again, I make a point, and then you then attribute to me this absurd caricature, and then say I didn't do that, Mark. I didn't give everybody $5,000. I didn't ask you to. What I'm saying is, if you make a point,
so let me understand it right. Do you think I should have specifically made that one point that you're making about Fox News? And then
no, again, you're minimizing what I'm saying. I'm not saying, my issue isn't that you didn't address the single point that Marc Lamont Hill was saying at this moment, that of all the points in the world to be made, I'm mad that you didn't make mine. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you said three things, right? For example, hypothetically. And I'm saying, if you're going to talk about those three things and make the audience believe that we're aligned on these three things, left and right, but it turns out if we actually critically analyze it, we're not, then you have to point that out. Otherwise, the powerful will walk away thinking that they're even more powerful. I'll give you an example. Let's just hear what I'm saying.
I do that on almost every opportunity.
And that's what we're going to. What I'm saying though is every opportunity isn't the same. For example, if this were 300 years ago, just hypothetical, 200 years ago, and then I'll leave it alone. And and we were in a place where black people weren't considered human beings, right? And black people legally were not citizens, right? And you were an abolitionist, and you walked in the room to a room of slaveholders and said, every citizen should get a house. Every citizen should have the right to vote. Every person should be safe in this country. We should all agree on that. And y'all clap and walk out and hug it out and leave, right? You could say, look at this. I just brought together the abolitionist and the slaveholder. The problem is they're agreeing that all people should be safe and all citizens should vote, but they don't believe that black people are citizens or humans. So they think they're agreeing with you because they don't accept that stipulation, right?
Well, Mark,
and what I'm saying, and just let me finish the thought. And so what I'm saying is, when you have that exchange with them, you have a duty to confront them on that misconception. And you can't say, well, I've said it in Bible study, I've said it on the streets, I've said it in the underground railroad. No, when we're having that conversation, we have to say that thing. And then if I confront you on that, you can't say, well, Mark, I can't confront all their philosophical and epistemological. No, I'm not asking you to do that. I'm saying on this issue that you brought up, you have a duty to show them how they're wrong, because that's what's high stakes. That's what decides who lives or dies. That's what makes the political conversion. Otherwise, and this is the last piece of it, 5 seconds. Otherwise, the slaveholder walks away saying, look, me and the abolitionists agree. Let's go back to business as usual. They actually feel strengthened in their position. Now, please don't say, Mark, why are you comparing this to slavery? Please don't get on. No. Actually hear the heart and the substance of my argument and be intellectually honest and address. Don't talk around it. Address the specific example I gave you, and please answer it.
Yeah. No, I get the analogy completely. I totally get it. So look, there's two parts to this. Number one, you just built a straw man. You said, oh, I did it in Bible study. I did it at a grocery store. No, I did it in right-wing spaces. I did it on some of the largest right-wing.
Yeah, that would be, that's not a straw man. To be clear, in 1800s, Bible study was a right-wing space. Only the right was allowed in the grocery store because black people were property. It's a perfect analogy. It's not a straw man. It's a perfect analogy.
You acknowledge I've done it in right-wing spaces, just not in that.
Just not the one that has us on the news right now. This is the big one.
But
this
I
was
don't
the one
know
to
if
do
it's
it.
going to make the news. Like half the time, I think it's going to make news, and it doesn't. I don't think half the time I don't think it's going to make any news.
Let's not get distracted. Please, I'll allow you to continue. I don't want to cut you off anymore. Please continue.
Okay, so then the second part of it is, Mark, in the problem with your analogy is that in the slaveholder, part of it, the fact that they hold slaves is so central to that conversation. So you can't possibly think like, oh, I just said all citizens should have an house, and I assume that they think that that means slaves, or I assume that they think that that doesn't mean slaves. Slavery is the central part of that conversation. Are they citizens or are they not citizens? Whereas now when we are talking about establishment, mainstream media, there's a lot of different variables there, and a lot of different things that people can mean. So whether we're talking about Fox or OAN within that conversation is not necessarily central in the same way that slavery is central in your analogy, right?
What's central in this conversation?
So what's central in this conversation is, do they actually believe some of these populist opinions, right? Do they actually dislike establishment politicians because they take donor money and hence are corrupt? And that's super central. And yes, my assessment is that MAGA voters, and yes, they're not seeing clear on Trump, they're not seeing clear on Elon Musk, but they do hate the corruption, and they do hate the donor class. Okay?
To that point, they clapped you when you said establishment media. They clapped when you said we hate Dick Cheney and Mitch McConnell. When you said we got to get rid of the donor class, no one clapped.
I noticed that. You know why, Mark? Because I challenged them by talking about their donors, and I've done that on many shows. And I've talked about, hey, remember Elon's a donor. I've talked about Miriam Adelson being a donor. When I get to Miriam Adelson, we go back to agreement. Okay, and you might not expect that from the right wing, who supported Israel throughout my entire life. But now when we talk about Israel with the right wing, half of them go, yeah, no, you're right. I don't know why and they're not doing it out of the charity of their heart. They're not doing it because they love Muslim lives so much. They're doing it because they don't want, in their way of thinking, they don't want to waste money on there. Why are we giving it to Israel when we should be having it here at home? But I'll take it. But I never would have gotten there if I never talked to them. I never would have realized how much they've got concern about funding Israel if I hadn't talked to them. So these are the things that we discover when we go to have these conversations. On the other hand, when you get to Elon, they pause and they're like, wait, I like Elon, right? So that means you got more work to do. And in the next conversation, you talk a little bit more about Elon and a little bit more, etc. So this is the way to break through, and for the country to finally like have conversations without constantly just walling each other off and saying they think we're so extreme. Like, for example, I go to talk to Charlie Kirk. The left is saying, oh, I can't believe you talked to Charlie Kirk when he said X, Y, Z. But do you know that the right wing is saying the same thing to Charlie? I can't believe you talked to Cenk when Cenk has said Nazi, fascist about Trump, and which I didn't even remember the Nazi part, but you showed me there, and there's a video going around, so I must have said it. But that's okay. And Jenkins defends trans girls going into high school sports in women's. So a lot of people hate that Charlie talked to me because they view me as completely extreme and illegitimate and out of bounds. And what we're doing is we're breaking down some walls. So, but
do you believe that you and Charlie Kirk are opposite sides of the same coin? Do you believe that you and Charlie Kirk are opposite sides of the same coin?
Well, look, that's a good question because I don't hate white people and I don't say anything against white people in general. I would never say like, hey, if I go into a plane and there's a white pilot, I'm worried. All right. So it's not exactly right that we're the same side.
Exactly. That's why it's not fair to say, well, they say the same thing about me. Well, y'all ain't the same. I also think it's interesting that
they think it's the same, Mark, but they do think it's the same.
But it's okay to say they're wrong. But also, I just to be a little petty, I appreciate that you saying you're not like Charlie Kirk because you don't hate white people. You accept that Charlie Kirk hates black people, which I appreciate. I just think it's wild and bizarre that you can accept that he hates black people and don't think he's a white supremacist. That's just weird to me. But just I know you got to go.
Such an unhelpful term. I can't stand it.
Well, as a black person, I can tell you, I find it unhelpful that someone could acknowledge someone hates black people, but thinks the most unhelpful thing is calling them a white supremacist. I mean, can you imagine?
No, that's not helpful, brother. Because I could show you 100 Islamophobes that are hardcore Islamophobes, but me calling them Islamophobes is not helpful. It's never going to break through to them. You've got to go to a different strategy. So when I go to a different strategy, instead of going, hey, I wonder how that'll turn out, which I think you're basically doing, which I appreciate, and that's why this is an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
I've got other folks saying, no, tear them down. Don't ever talk to anyone on the other side. They're white supremacists. They're this, they're that. That if you go in the room with them, they instantly gain credibility and legitimacy, and now you've helped them. Help them how, man? I don't know, man. I just think the idea of not hating them, being helpful to them, is a very wrong way of thinking about it.
Well, I think one way, and I know we got to go. I think again, it's not to me about going in the room. It's what we do in the room. But I think one way, the one thing a white supremacist hates being called is a white supremacist. The one thing that racists hate being called is a racist. And I think, and usually the people calling them racist or white supremacists are the people who are catching hell from them. And so I think it's sort of bizarre to police the language or to tell someone, for example, hey, that person that hates Muslims, it's not helpful for you to, that person that called you a towelhead, that person that called you a devil worshiper, that person that called you a pagan and a rapist, it's not helpful to call them Islamophobic. Oh, that person that called you a nigger, oh, no. It's not helpful for you to call them white supremacists. That feels paternalistic and almost and is disrespectful to the people who are victimized by it. You may think it's unhelpful, but I actually don't think it's your place or anyone else's place. It's like it'd be like saying I don't think it's helpful to. It would be like me saying to women, I don't think it's helpful for you guys to call Donald Trump sexist or misogynistic. I don't think that's helpful, ladies. I mean, come on. Can you at least see why somebody would find that a problematic claim for you to make?
No, hold on. You're conflating two things that is super unfair, because you can call them anything you like. I'm not stopping you from calling them. I'm not stopping women from calling them whatever they want. I'm just telling you what I'm doing, right? And in fact,
no. You're not doing that.
Hold on, Mark.
That's not what you said. No, I'm calling you on a contradiction. Hold on.
Hold on, Mark.
That's not what you said.
No, Mark.
You can backtrack, but that's not what you said. What you said was, I don't think it's helpful. I hear people doing this and it's not working. Let us try something different. Let us, not let me.
Mark. No. Okay, hold on. So number one, are you allowed to say whatever the fuck you want? Of course, right? I don't police anyone.
But you think it's unhelpful.
Yeah. But is it unhelpful? Yes. Okay. Now that's up to you. You want to be unhelpful because you're pissed. I get it. Especially if it affected you. So like if I go tell a fellow Muslim, hey, it's unhelpful to say the Jews are this or the Jews are that. And he goes, I don't want to hear that shit. Okay. My family got killed. I hear him and he can say whatever he wants. Right. But is it unhelpful? It is unhelpful. Okay. So for example,
I just want to be clear that that's what you're saying.
Hold on, let me finish my thought. Let me finish my thought. So Hillary Clinton and everybody, and Kamala Harris, what did a lot of people do? They call Trump sexist, right? And I think that they have a lot of evidence on their side. But was it helpful? No, it wasn't helpful. It didn't work. Okay. So hold on, let me finish. So all I'm asking is, let me do my thing without assuming bad intent, without assuming that I'm helping. Because what I'm hearing from some portions of the left is, you're not allowed to do it. Not, hey, I don't want to do it. Hey, I want to call them white supremacists. They say, no, you have to call him a white supremacist. And if you didn't call him that, then that's it. You're a bad guy. You're a traitor. You're a racist or whatever. No, I don't accept that. You're not going to get me to say anything that I don't want to say. I believe in your freedom to say whatever you want, Mark, and I'm going to say whatever I want. And I think my strategy is infinitely better. I'm going to execute that. I'm going to get us some policy wins, I hope, over the long run. And then I'm going to say you're welcome.
I hope you do. Just to be clear, just on that last point, again, I wasn't trying to tell you what to say or not to say. I was pointing out the contradiction. What you had said was you were only saying it's unhelpful for you. You weren't saying it was unhelpful. You weren't telling other people it was unhelpful. You weren't policing or critiquing the actions of others based on me saying. Based on me saying that I find when I hear you say it's unhelpful, I find that problematic as a person who's on the business end of the white supremacy. And what you just said was you weren't telling us that. You were only speaking for yourself. But then even in your rejoinder, in your response, you pointed out that you actually are saying to the people that it was unhelpful. This isn't about their right to say it, free speech, but you're telling them that it's unhelpful. And I'm saying telling Black people or telling women or telling Muslims or telling trans folk, hey, you have a right to say this. It's your experience. But I'm just telling you that's unhelpful. I'm just telling you, even in terms of strategically uniting folk, as a Black person and as a Muslim and as an whatever title you want to put on me, when I'm told that thing, for every right-wing person you potentially get, I'm telling you, you're going to lose a whole lot of us.
Okay. So, Mark, here's the thing. Again, the framing is critical because you said two words that are not the same. You said policing and critiquing. Okay. So I am critiquing the strategy, but I'm not policing it. I'm not the boss of anyone. Okay. So people want, and in fact, on our own network, everybody's allowed to say whatever they want. And tons of our hosts disagree with me from the left on the trans issues and on all the things that you've challenged me on. And I don't police that. I don't police it. But do I critique it? Yeah, because we're having a discussion about what's the best strategy to win people over to our side.
Fair enough. That's fair. I'm saying as a Black person being told, hey, you shouldn't call the white supremacist white. I could see if you said, Mark, I don't think he's a white supremacist. I think that's fair ground. But saying, yeah, he does hate Black people, but it's not helpful to call him a white supremacist. I'm just telling you.
But even more, even when you say he hates Black people, it's more complicated than that. It's like
what you said. I said, are you opposite sides of the same coin? And you said no, because I'm not like Charlie Kirk. I don't hate white people. We're not opposite sides of the same coin. One would infer that you were saying that he hates white people. That's not a
no. I know, and that's why I'm clarifying now, Mark.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, and so Charlie has said those things that are deeply problematic, and that are those comments were racist, right? Well, I mean, why are we worried about a Black pilot? That's crazy. And in fact, I challenged him on that in one of our interviews, and he walked it back a little bit, not all the way, but he walked it back a little bit. And in fact, the fact that he walked it back a little bit surprised me, right? So, okay, now we have that conversation, and all of a sudden he's walking it back a little bit. Okay, so that's a little bit of a win there. But in terms of again, helpful or not helpful. So you remember the protest in Washington on Israel? And somebody writes burns an American flag, and somebody writes Hamas on a statue. So yeah. I'm not the boss of them. I can't stop them from doing that. Okay. Nor would I want to live in a world where I stop them from doing that. Having said that, not helpful. Okay. And it's my job as a host to say what I think is helpful and not helpful. And that was deeply unhelpful. It drives people away from us. We want people to relate to Palestinians, to relate to Muslims, and feel like, oh, there, but for the grace of God, go I. And when you write Hamas or you burn an American flag, what you're doing is you're saying, I'm not like you. I'm the other. And you should be worried about me. You should be concerned about me. And I think it's a bad strategy. And do you think that's analogous? It's literally my job to say what I think is good and bad strategy.
Do you think what you just described is analogous to telling a Black person not to call a person who hates Black people a white supremacist?
No, I would never tell a Black person to say this or that. But if that person was, hold on, if that person was the campaign chair for Kamala Harris, then yes, I would have that conversation, because then they're not just speaking for themselves. They're trying to win an election, and that's a different dynamic in a different context. But hey, you're angry. Somebody was racist to you. You want to call them a racist? Of course, I totally get it. Obviously. I mean, and I told you earlier, right? So when people come at me in an unfair way in those Israel debates, I call them a racist or a bigot right back at them. It depends on the context. What are we trying to accomplish? In that case, why did I call them that? Because I'm trying to get them to understand just blanket calling someone anti-Semitic doesn't win the argument. I could just do the same exact thing and call you a bigot. And I didn't win the argument either, but at least we've neutralized it. But if they're not bringing it up and they're not saying this or that in a place where you're trying to stop private equity from buying our residential homes, I think it's poor strategy to say, well, look at me working with these white supremacists or whatever it might be. I don't want to do straw man. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Fair enough. So
yeah.
what's the end game here? How do you see this ending?
Yeah, there's two possible ways. So one is that we try this, etc. Then Trump starts doing things, and they're not any of the things that the right-wing populists talked about. And then when Trump does them, they instantly change their position and go, no, I love when private equity buys my homes. I want moms to go back to the coal mines the day after having a baby. I love war now. Let's invade Panama and Greenland. Okay, then my mission failed, and my strategy was not right. And you know what I'll do then? I'll adjust, because that's what thoughtful people do. They try to find a way to get to the answers that we want. Okay, now that's the bad case scenario. The good case scenario is not nirvana. Trump does not turn into Bernie Sanders. The good case scenario is, as they're doing other things, including an enormous robbery that's about to happen, okay, maybe we get a couple of wins. Maybe, in fact, this is the craziest thing I'll say. I'm a tiny bit hopeful about turning around on Israel, because I've heard those right-wing guys. They don't want to keep funding Israel. I'm telling you that right now, okay? If we got to turn around on Israel, oh my God, that would be such a giant win in the midst of what appeared to be hopeless times. Now that's a hope against hope, okay? But can we win on any one of those things? Like, for example, like, this is the easiest one, right? I say, one of the things I say is pardon Edward Snowden, because I know that they want to pardon Edward Snowden, right? And we agree with pardoning Edward Snowden. And what that does is, that doesn't change the world, but it takes a first step towards unity. And then let's see, well, do they really mean it on cutting the Pentagon? Because the voters mean it. The voters mean it, or at least a big portion of them do. I know that the politicians don't mean it. So now that's an interesting collision. And what happens? Does the populist right wing rebel, or do they just simmer back down and go, yes, sir, absolutely, sir? I don't know. And I think that's super interesting. A lot of folks on the left say, no, they already know. They already know. Nobody on the right ever means anything. They're all robots, or they're all evil, or whatever that they think. That's just not true. They're human beings, and there's a giant range of that 77 million voters.
You know, when you came on the show, I thought the biggest thing we were going to end up disagreeing on was you being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, which has been as deflating a movement in the last 3 weeks as anything happening politically. But it turned out we were going to have we had this spirited conversation, and just like you said, the Steelers are going to do better in the playoffs despite this losing streak. You know, you're also saying this plan is going to work despite the evidence to the contrary. You could be a prophet, not in the Islamic sense, but in the Western Christian sense of, you could be absolutely right on both of these things. You could see the crystal ball better than the rest of us. I hope you're right. I hope it all works. I don't agree. And I do hope that if it doesn't, you come out and tell us that, you acknowledge that. I also hope that if you begin to take money from right-wing movements or organizations, because that you'll tell us that, because you've been straightforward with us. I've never known you to be dishonest. I believe you. I don't think you're grifting. I just think you're wrong. I think you're shamefully optimistic. And I think you have a faith in our open enemies that I think is unwarranted, unhealthy, and unhelpful. But I hope you're right and I'm wrong. I hope your optimism wins.
You know, that's the best I could hope for. And you just said something that I say on the show all the time. Look, I hope I'm wrong, right? I'll make these predictions like, I think Trump's going to win. I'm super worried about it. And I hope I'm wrong, right? I think Kamala Harris's strategy is the wrong one. I hope I'm wrong, right? So time will tell. But Mark, for those who don't know, I've been through a lot of these tests already. So MSNBC, I turned down over $1 million to say the things that are right. They wanted me to be basically pro-establishment, and I wouldn't do it. They wanted me to, be soft on the inside. I mean, there's a moment where you are tested, and you're tested with a lot of money, prestige, status, all those things. And I said, I'd rather tell the truth to my audience. So I'm not going to turn around after all this time and all the pain that we've gone through. I'm going to keep my eyes on the prize. And to me, if we don't pass progressive bills, then we didn't get anything done, right? Because then the rest of it is just ego games. Whoever has the status, etc. I don't give a damn about that. All I care about is passing bills, because that's the only thing that affects the actual voters' lives. So that's what I'm going to try to do.
Well, inshallah, it'll work out for you, my brother. Thank you so much, Cenk. It's always good to see you. Let's talk again soon, and enjoy your night, brother.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it, brother. Have a good night.
Everybody, y'all know the man. His name is Cenk Uygur, founder, CEO of the Young Turks. Somebody who has earned our commitment to giving the benefit of the doubt. Doesn't mean you have to agree with him. I've made it very clear tonight that I don't agree with our brother, but I am going to give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that he's operating in good faith. And it's that we just have a spirited, principled disagreement on strategy. I think he's way off on this, and he thinks I'm way off on this. And I think that's where the best conversations emerge. And I'm glad that we've had that kind of conversation. So I want to thank him again for joining us. And I want to thank you all for watching. Y'all have been in this chat, lighting this mug up. There have been more things dropped in this chat than I've seen in a long time. I'm going to read just a few of them. I thought that this conversation was interesting. I thought that it was obviously spirited. I've never had to debate him before, so I don't know. And I didn't expect to debate now. I thought it would be a little more conversational, but it just felt like there were multiple moments where he wasn't hearing my point, or multiple moments where he was ignoring my point or obfuscating my point or misrepresenting my point. Some people debate that way. I'm not assuming that he's being dishonest here. I think he, again, may have not heard me. And sometimes in the heat of debate, you hear people differently, or you don't hear a comment in the most generous interpretation possible. All that is possible. I don't want to make any assumptions about Cenk, except that he was missing my point and sort of caricaturing my point and minimizing my point. And the thing is, on cable news, when you got 3 to 5 minutes, you got to keep going. But here at Night School, that's not how we rock. That is not how we rock. I think Bullet the Bunny said that in the comments. Yo, that's not what we do here. What we do here is we drill down. And I'm not going to be a dick about it and like not let you leave the point forever. But you're not just going to be saying shit and flying by. We're going to have the conversation. We're going to dig in. And I'm going to say, no, that's not what I said. Or I want you to say, hey, Mark, that's not a good analogy. And I thought by the time we got to the slave master, enslaved person analogy, I thought that the point was clearer. As clear as I could make it within my limited abilities. We all have limited abilities as humans. I did the best I could, and I hope that he heard me. I hope you all heard me, and you all have to make the final decision on what's right and what's wrong. But I'm surprised at this. I'm surprised at this. And if he's not taking money from people, and I don't think he's taking money, I think he's just doing what he thinks is right. I just think he's damn wrong. I think our brother is just wrong. Anyway, I want to shout out some folk here. Todd, TJ Taylor, thank you for gifting 5 memberships. I hope y'all grab them things up. Siham Achan, thank you so much. Deculturation as well. Isaac Hemsi once again came through with 10 memberships. Yo, you are them people. Bullet the Bunny said, Cenk, you are a media powerhouse. Please don't drift right. If you're going to be in those rooms, bring them left, move the culture left. He's saying that's what he's doing. I don't see it. Power to the People podcast said they're not buying it. A lot of people in the comments said they weren't buying him. You literally, Snack Panther, Cenk, we don't believe you need less bigoted people. I'm assuming that's a takeover reference, Jay-Z. That poly market money makes a man move funny. Look, I don't know nothing about that, but it's interesting. I didn't get to Isaac's question on union busting. I didn't see it until right now. Most of these weren't questions that need to be given live. And I had them I was supposed to have them for like 20, 30 minutes. And our brother gave us an hour and a half. We got to be very, very grateful to him for that. Some of these I've already posted. People asking, white supremacy paying you. Who's paying you, buddy? Ali said, okay, I was riding with you to this interview. Look, I didn't do this to dissuade people from rocking with him. I did this to have an honest conversation. That purple juice is my energy drink. I just decided to stop drinking out of these cans because Jazz, until these sponsors come through and actually pay me to drink an energy drink, I'll still drink them, but I'm not giving y'all free advertising. They make enough money. Cenk didn't have the same energy. We interviewed David Duke. Why this nonsense? That's the thing to me. It's like I feel like there's been a pivot, and maybe it's an ideological shift, and we all have them. But I just don't understand this one. Squidward Sagan said, really impressing host to call off Alice's thing. Yes, we do here. We got to call this shit out, man. None of that cable news drive-by talking points and analysis. Yo, we get to it here. We get after it. Cheers to the smaller lefties that gain followers from TYT after this. Cenk will sync with the Anna. Let's be friends with the fascists. Yeah, I just don't see it. Please talk to Hassan Abi about his uncle. Hassan Abi gonna come back on here. That's my brother. I'm gonna text him, tell him to come on. We're gonna talk about that too. I'm curious to know what Hassan Abi thinks about this. I mean, he has his own mind and stands on his own too. I'd be curious to see what he says. Simply Shawnee, thank you for your comment as well. Rolando, my brother, my peoples, thank you for generously donating those 5 memberships. Hassan's the real leftist of the family. I don't know about all that, y'all. Mr. Coconuts, thank you. Kinley George, thank you for gifting 5 memberships. Not that y'all call TYT the young Trumpers. Y'all are wilding out here. The right said I'm right now. I agree with the right. But Cenk is not debating them. He is bowing to them and not calling out anything and doing what he just did. The right is so much nicer, and we're all populist. No, they are in a cult. Sam Jeppy, you hit the nail on the mofo head. I got to look at this Polymarket Studio thing. I've seen a couple comments from that. I don't understand. Sam said something that I said in the conversation. Cenk misrepresenting his appearance. He did not push back on corruption in mainstream media, Fox, Trump, fake populists, nothing. He cowered there. I didn't see much pushback, and that's what I said to him. So Andre Aki said the same thing about Polymarket. I don't know anything about that. I don't, but I'm gonna do my homework because it sounds like something I need to know about. Respectfully, does Cenk believe that we irresponsibly call conservatives racist when conservative values and policies are fundamentally and systemically racist? That's why I was asking about this opposite sides of the same coin thing. Like, oh, well, they think that about them and we think that about us, or they think that about us, we think that about them. That ain't the point. They're not opposite sides of the same coin. Let's stop pretending that it is. Mark, you have shared the stage with plenty of people on the right with that. My issue is not sharing the stage. I have shared the stage in person. I have shared the stage on TV. I have shared the stage on these platforms. I'm not saying don't walk in the room. I've said that repeatedly tonight. Go in the room, talk in the room, be in the room, engage the room, do your thing in the room. But being in the room isn't enough. What do you say when you're in the room? I was at Fox News. Pull up any interview with me on Fox News. Anyone. You ain't got. I'm not going to cherry pick. Go to YouTube. Look it up. What did I say in the Fox News room? When you watch me and Piers Morgan, watch my appearances on Piers Morgan in the last year. When I'm debating Candace Owens, when I'm debating Tommy Lahren, what am I saying? I'm not saying I don't Obama and our differences are so much bigger than our. No. We out here getting busy, debating. We get into it. I get to it. Cenk is dancing around it, and I get why. If he doesn't bend the knee, he wouldn't be in the room. That's what a lot of people are here saying. I'm sure he doesn't see it as bending the knee, but that's what it feels like. Young Turks, keep up the great work. You are in the minority here, but this is my house, so I get it. I'm glad Boxy Brown 6900 supports Cenk. He should, if that's what he thinks. I just think you're wrong. Cenk sounds like when Trump said there are good people on both sides. I don't even know what you're laughing at, Vanguard, but I'll take it. Cenk wanted to paint himself as courageous. The fact is he promised something to abandon his morals. He was promised something. Again, I don't want to assume the worst. I don't think that's the case. I think he's just wrong. I got to find out what happened with Ben Dixon. I don't know this story. I'm going to look into it, though. I'm going to look into it. Cenk is tired of losing, got off the crazy train. if you leave your political alliances because you're tired of losing, like I'm gonna stop being a radical leftist and I'm gonna become a conservative because I'm tired of losing. That's like saying anyway, yeah, yeah, that's a weird moral position to take. You know, like, oh, I'm tired of all this abolition talk. I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna be pro-slavery, that way I can win. All right. Half y'all feel like strong about polymarket. The Snack Panther seems to be a big person talking about it. Luigi K. Shaw, people from right, left going against enemy on healthcare issues like that, right-wing alliance is needed. And we celebrated Shapiro when it's going against him when he defunded UA. I don't exactly understand what you're saying, but again, the issue here isn't about being strategic and forming alliances to get policy victories. I'm okay with that. I'm just not sure that that's what's happening with his strategy. Is that another 5? Sheikh, I'm sure that's Sheikh Jarrah. Shout out to the Jerusalem Governorate, Mahafala Quds. I like Cenk's humor. Gali G, of course. Philistine, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. Rape culture and straw man to Mark. Yo, man, when people, I can deal with a debate when people start giving bad argumentation, man. You're right. It wakes me up. I'll be like, all right, it's on the popping. Because, you know, I'd be beard scratching by now, Jazz. Otherwise, the voters are in a cult. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes. Jack, they don't hate Dick Cheney and Mitch McConnell for the same reasons we do. It's only because they feel they are mean to Trump. Exactly. To Jasper Ragurama, Cenk's strategy should not be equated with moral saying on issues. Voting for lesser two evils is strategic, not moral. Calling people grifters who don't agree with us on all issues is stupid. I agree. Again, more strawmen. No one here said, I didn't say he's a grifter, and no one's saying you're a grifter if you disagree on all issues. I think people are concerned with the overall strategy, not the specific tactic or the specific argument. Even trying to stop the people trying to point out that corporations are our enemy, not each other, is harming us. Stop doing the corporate. You think that's what I'm doing, Rainbow Dark? I'm saying call out the corporations. Call out the corporation as the enemy. But when you walk in a room of people who don't believe that, make sure that they walk away with that understanding. That's all I'm saying. This guy's playing in your face. Shut this down. Shut this down, Mark. Good day. Yo, y'all. Jenks thinks he can sway white supremacists. Thank you, Mark, for calling Cenk out on this. Who cares if it is unhelpful? It is a fact. He is pandering to them for buy-in, so he doesn't immediately mention Fox News. Just like he doesn't say he is Muslim until he has an in. It feels icky. It does feel icky, Jihan Ali. And also, I'm not sure why he believes that half hour in the conversation where they love him and they're charmed by him, and then he says, hey, I'm Muslim, by the way. Maybe all Muslims are bad. The thought here is that somehow after doing that, they'll then recalibrate their position on Muslims. I think what they tend to do is recalibrate their position on him. Like, you know what? I thought he was good till I found out he's one of the Muslims. He was hiding the whole time, right? That's what happens. You know, it's like the story of Phyllis Wheatley. You know, it's like, oh, black people can't read or write. So she writes a book. They say, oh, they didn't say, oh, well, it turns out black people can read or write. They came up with another excuse. Read Notes on Virginia, Thomas Jefferson. You'll see what I'm talking about. Eiley said, Cenk is trying to piss in your pocket and tell you it's raining. Keep that boot on his neck, Mark. There's a visual for you. Thank you, brother. Shukran. I agree. Repeatedly screaming white supremacists isn't helpful, but you don't have to stop at name calling. It's good to say why, after, or before. Again, right. That's all. That's the whole point. With that logic, you shouldn't call it murder. Yo, dead ass. Honestly, I'm insulted that Cenk even came on because he's ducking all the leftist channels. Tells me he thought he could win this conversation. Is that what happened? Am I seen as like light work? Am I soft touching in the left wing debate circles? People thought they could duck the smoke on all the other channels and come here and get an easy win. I don't think that. I hope that's not what he thought. But if so, that didn't go the way he wanted it to. Cenk is looking for money, sell out. What he just said is disgusting. I hope all the good TYT contributors quit. I'm not going to call him a sellout. Again, I'm going to assume the best of intentions from him and just say, I think the brother's wrong. Oh yeah, Amakisi said exactly what I'm thinking. You know, we don't call them white supremacist racists because we are pissed. We call them white supremacist racists because they are, and we face the repercussions of that. Exactly. Rolando throwing him tomatoes. Pitchforks, thank you for joining the channel. Everybody, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and if you're inclined, hit that join button, become a member. You know, we get busy over here, y'all. I can use your support. Jazz LP, Jenks, when do you call rapist a rapist after they raped 1 million people? No, you're supposed to call it right out then. That's her argument with regard to this idea of how we talk about people. Jake doesn't deserve to finish his dumbass thought. Sam said most, that was from Parker. Sam Jeppy, most don't think you have bad intent. We see you are dead wrong. You are selling out the left in these shows, weakening our hand by not pushing back. That's all I'm saying. It's a bad strategy. It's a bad position. Thank you, Isaac, for gifting another 5. Yo, you are the man in these streets. I stayed on TYT to support Dr. Richie. I need to cancel my subscription. Cenk and Anna are aligned with the movement that works against my humanity. I think I read these already. So I think that was pretty much everything. I wanted to make sure that people got their stuff read. Yeah, Pitchforks drag it here saying the right thing too. We already saw the first Trump administration win. Why does Cenk think it'll go any different now? I don't think he's saying it'll go different. I think he's saying that it's going to go exactly the way he thinks he thought it was going to go, and it's awful, and he's trying to redirect it. Not that the inclinations for it to go any different. Ashley said, Cenk was my introduction to independent media and the progressive movement. I really hope he has good intentions. His shift lately has been disappointment. Thank you, Mark, for having these discussions. Word. Thank you for listening and supporting. Kareem Washington, thank you for your generous donation. Lux Loomis, thank you for your generous donation as well. Cenk is acting like us black folk haven't been with casual racists like him and Anna for decades. This ain't new. I don't think that Cenk is racist. Again, I just think the brother's wrong. Thank you, Antonio Ellis, for your generous donation. Jazz LP, the purple juice company was meant for Cenk. Got you. I thought you were talking about this stuff I was drinking, because you know what? It's purple and it's delicious. No mas, Tomas. If we're giving Cenk the benefit of the doubt, then he has to be playing by MAGA rules, assuming followers don't care about it. I feel you. I agree, Corey. We don't need one of those. We don't need a centralized left channel. We just got to keep putting out good content and let it go where it goes. Zafoy Verona, thank you. I think that's right, Juggernaut. I don't think he's a grifter. I think he's confronting his core belief. I just think he's wrong. Stacy, thank you for your generous donation. Juggernaut, thank you for your generous donation. Peter Rich, thank you for your generous donation and for becoming a channel member. Again, y'all, become a channel member if you can. The unhinged sweetheart, what do you say to people who say those who voted for Kamala already understand how Trump voters can look past horrible things? I think, given her sense of power, I think that's exactly right. I think they're right. There's no way you can say to somebody, how dare you vote for Donald Trump given his stance on blah, 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 when Kamala voters are literally being asked to ignore her stance on Palestine, to vote for her. Again, you know, you and I've had that debate. I struggle with this issue the entire election cycle. I'm not saying, I think that's a bad argument, right? I don't think you can. I don't think a Kamala supporter can say, "How dare you?" Right? I think what you have to say is, "Look, we're both looking past bad shit. We both are dealing with war criminals here. We're both dealing with blah 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 blah. But this agenda is significantly better than this agenda. This one will change your life in ways that are better than this person who will change your life." That's the best argument they can make. Again, I ultimately voted green, but I certainly struggle with it, and not because I support genocide or war or neoliberalism or any of that, but because I was trying to figure out what's the outcome that would create the best. What's the choice that would create the best outcome? And that's a struggle. It's a constant struggle. Just supporting the channel. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Guy Lee. They go on these platforms to mainly crap on the left and pander to the right. Lee Royster, thank you. That was from Marlon Burma. Thank you. Lee Royster, thank you for gifting 20 memberships. Oh my God, y'all are so generous. Ezek with another 5. Yo, you channel MVP. Just maybe. Oh, thank you. Just the legend. Just the legendary. I was like, I know that name. I was like, yes. And I agree with you. I don't think Cenk is disingenuous at all. I think he just has more faith and optimism in the goodness of these people than I do. I just don't believe that our open enemies can be anything other than that. Juggernaut Magnum Cenk is sincere, and this is a valuable, important moment for progressives. And then I'm Pooh, not Shiesty. Thank you for joining the channel and becoming a member. Joy M said, assuming Cenk turns out to be right, is only setting up the right to take credit for years of grassroots leftist work, giving them long-term leverage. Well, look, if he's correct, I don't care who get the credit, as long as the outcome is the same. The point is, he ain't correct. That ain't what's going to happen. It's not. Anyway, family, I'm going to leave y'all alone. But thank y'all for watching. This is what we do over here at Night School, man. We get to it. Keep watching, y'all. Keep supporting the channel. Hit the like button. There's a lot. This is one of our biggest live episodes in weeks. Please make sure you hit the like button. Let the YouTube algorithms know that mainstream independent media works, that corporate media ain't the only game in town. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button right now, y'all. If you hit the subscribe button, it increases our social media footprint, which allows us to get our content out in more spaces. The other thing here, I'm sorry, I'm still fighting a cold. The other thing here, of course, is hit the join button. Please, family, consider hitting the join button. When you hit the join button, you become a monthly paid subscriber to the channel. That's how we build an alternative to these other outlets. It's how we build an alternative to corporate media. It's how we build an alternative to the sellout liberal organizations. It's how we create something different. Please consider joining the channel right now. I know some of y'all can't make a monthly commitment. I get that. Consider making a one-time payment right now. For some of y'all here for the first time, y'all learn what we're about. Consider making a one-time payment right now. A one-time donation. I shouldn't say payment. A one-time donation right now. Think about it. Consider it, family. Think about it. You can go to Cash App, you can go to PayPal, you can go to Venmo, you can go to Zelle, and you can drop something in just for the night, just for the month, however you think about it. Just consider what we call tuition for night school. You can give $1. There's no amount that's too small. You can give $1 million. That would be amazing. Definitely not too small. But anything between $1 and $1 million is also welcomed. There are a few people who have said they want by the end of the year to make a big payment for the year. We would love that. We had one person who promised $10,000. If you want to drop $10,000 on Cash App or Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, we would love that. We'd be grateful. $5,000. Two people said they were going to drop $5,000 a piece. We would love that. Please consider the Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. Dropping that there, it would go a long way toward helping us build what we're trying to do here. But we're not asking everybody to do that. The ideal thing tonight, to be honest, is if everybody watching right now could donate $10. If everybody watching right now could give $10, we would be able to meet our financial goals for the month. If every single person did that, we'd be able to have night school, which you saw tonight. We'd be able to have office hours, coffee and books, the Classroom in the Cell podcast with political prisoner Mumia Abu Jamal. We could do all of it if everybody watching right now could give $10. Again, if you can give more, we'd be grateful. If you could give less, we'd be just as grateful. But on average, if everybody here could drop $10, it would go a long way. I want to thank you all for watching tonight. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. Y'all like Thursday night debates? This is what we're doing from now on. Thursday nights, every chance we get, we're going to have a live debate. Sometimes it'll be with people on the left. Sometimes it'll be people on the right. Sometimes it'll be a cultural issue, but we're going to try and have spirited debates on Thursday nights so that you all can get a vibe for how we rock out here. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, family, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace.